Hello, friends. If you remember in the last episode, what I had emphasized is that to be a great leader, you don't need any fancy title. And I, I have received few messages confirming and being very happy that that's the case, especially from some of my friends at IIT and in school, who, as I mentioned in that episode, were people who became great leaders. And I had sent a link of that episode with a special message to them saying that you are one of these. So, fancy title is not what makes you a leader. But what makes you a real leader is the values and the skills that you have been able to inculcate in yourself. So, in today's episode, we continue to look at some of those skills and what are the things that you would do, that you would practice, that you would make a habit out of, that go into making of a good leader. So it's all about good leadership. And therefore, the first thing I would like to point out, because as I said, we began today's topic, and in the last topic, I emphasized well enough that you don't need a fancy title. So a fancy title, what it does, it makes you a manager, a boss, so to say, but not a leader. And therefore, let us look at some of the differences between a boss and a leader. And I think one of the first ones I would like to mention here is that a boss gives orders. And I've heard so many people say that, "Arey, main usko order kar deta hu. I'm going to order that guy and he will do it." So a boss gives orders, but a leader, you will not hear him or her say that. A leader says, okay, let me ask him, or let me take his opinion, because the leaders are constantly searching for a solution and just don't want something to be done ad hocly because they believe that's the right thing to do. And therefore, we can automatically say that while bosses may be result-oriented, okay, all they're concerned about is I have given him this order and let him just do that. Whereas the leader is more people-focused. He will take opinion, he will ask his teammates, he will give them an assignment, let them do it their way as long as they deliver. So they're more of people-focused. I talked about this very often, about the difference between hearing and listening. A boss hears, but a leader listens. And when you listen, you will imbibe and understand that there may be a different way of doing something, and you will try to implement that. A boss, unfortunately, has heard it but not registered it, and therefore he loses this opportunity. A boss always blames others. Arey, this guy didn't do it, that's why we failed. Oh, these people are such a stupid team or whatever, and then he's going to try and shift blame onto others. But a leader takes responsibility. He knows he is the one who is driving the team. And therefore, if the team has not delivered, it is his challenge. While a boss generally is in the criticizing mode. You didn't do this, you didn't do that. Oh, what, and go on and on and on. But a leader will praise and coach. There will be things that go wrong in both cases, whether it's a boss or a leader. But while the boss will criticize, the leader will first praise whatever went right with, and then coach for what did not work out. A boss demands respect. He wouldn't be one who would refrain from telling that guy, "Kya so raha tha, kya salam nahi kiya?" Typical, right? Yeah. But a leader earns respect by his actions, by his walking the talk. by his ideas, by the way he tells people. He earns respect, and that respect is not associated with a title or anything. A boss, and I know plenty of such bosses, are the ones who tend to say, I know it all. As we say in Gujarati, and as I have said very often in private conversations with people, the boss is the MBA. In Gujarati, MBA means Mane Badhu Avde Che. I am a know-all. But a leader is a perpetual learner. He knows that there is something new to learn, no matter how much he knows. And in today's time, especially where the world is changing so rapidly, it makes an even bigger difference. So now that we know that we want to be a leader and not a boss, what are some of the traits that a leader must have, develop, cultivate, hone, improve upon? The first and foremost one here is to understand your team. You need to first understand how the organization works. Maybe you set it up yourself, but you need to keep that in mind at all times. How are the balancing acts of interlocking virtues? So you need to understand that, because that's an important part of how your team and you are going to operate. You need to make sure, you need to understand and make sure that your team conducts themselves, every single member conducts themselves with keeping the organization values in mind, not shirking them. You need to understand each and every individual member of the team, because you are going to personally help them and get involved in them and look after their welfare. And at the end of the day, remember, if your team fails, it is your failure. And therefore, before criticizing the team, look in the mirror, sit down and think, introspect on what is wrong with you, or not with you per se, but with the way you are operating and conducting yourself as a leader. And you need to constantly help your team to grow and develop. Because if that doesn't happen, in reality, you're pushing your team backward. And we've talked about this in some other context on an earlier episode, saying that even if you are the best, but if you remain where you are without taking a step forward, you are, relatively speaking, going a step back, because those other people are going to keep running and catch up with you and overtake you at some time, maybe. So you need to be constantly developing your team. Another important thing that leaders need to develop, understand, and own, this is something you own with a lot of introspection and foresight and understanding of human nature. You need to learn about timing. You need to know that whatever you know is never enough. Whatever you do is never enough. But whatever you do, you must know when to do it. That timing is critical. And you must know why you want to do it, because only then will you be able to focus and reach your goal. So you need to learn about timing. I think this is something we all know. We've spoken about it in many, many occasions. Learn from your failures. And this, the first thing I'd like to tell you is that do not berate your team when they fail. And remember that each and every failure has a lesson for you. There is a learning for you from within that failure. And when you put all these learnings from various failures and successes together, when you combine that knowledge, That is what we call experience. And experience is super valuable. And it is this experience that is going to guide you in all your future decisions and actions. So it's very important. That experience that you gather is very important. And that is why sometimes people say one must fail to learn better. I mean, don't mean failure all the time. You just keep learning and get nowhere. But failure is an essential part of growing. You need to embrace accessibility. Now, I remember when I spoke about this at one informal discussion with some friends who were, talking about leadership and how they were conducting a leadership workshop and wanted some inputs on what to talk about. And when we said, let us understand that every leader has to understand accessibility. And surprisingly, every one of those people who was there were just 3 or 4 of them, thought that I mean changing the infrastructure of their factories. These were all factory owners, so that it becomes facilitated, it becomes convenient for differently abled or physically challenged people to access and come to work. Far from it. In fact, one of them said, but we can't employ physically challenged people because the work is such. Yeah, but I'm not talking of that. When I mean accessible, I mean, first of all, let us understand, the way I mean accessible is very different from being infrastructure that is accessible. I'm talking of the mind and the actions being accessible. So you need to facilitate and create an opportunity for each and every member of the organization, all the employees, no matter what level they are at, to be able to work efficiently and comfortably without the fear of scorn or threat. And this accessibility, trust me, is an ongoing process. You are never going to be completing it. So you need to make a super commitment. And therefore, accessibility has to have a solid amount of commitment from your side. Okay. So remember this, accessibility is very important. You need to set up systems. Some of them may be completely ad hoc. Some of them may be just a group of 4 or 5 or even 3 people or even 1 person at times, giving you some indication of that. But you need to be able to measure and quantify certain processes and actions that you are undertaking all the time. Because when you make improvements, when you start moving things, the only way you will be able to judge whether those improvements, those changes are going in the right direction or not is by being able to get that same kind of quantification with the same viewpoint available after implementing your change. Only then will you know. Because just going by a gut feeling doesn't mean anything. Okay? So do that. To achieve this kind of measurement and fixing the challenges, success in fixing things, you need to make it a habit to adapt and audit all processes and actions on a regular, ongoing basis. The next important trait is that you need to practice and create trust. So how do you practice trust? This first thing, basic thing you need to start with is to trust your employees, trust your teams to be able to perform and deliver and figure out ways on how they will get the task done. Do not, I repeat, do not micromanage them. That's the surest way of losing the faith of your team. So now when you practice this trust and when you walk the talk at all times, you are automatically creating trust. Because when you're not micromanaging, your team will trust you because you trust them. It's reciprocal. Okay. And one thing I must mention here is that when I say walk the talk, that means you must practice what you preach. But I have seen very often in many organizations where they practice teamwork, where they preach teamwork and everything, but at the end of the day, when it comes to reality, they play favoritism. Not a great idea. So don't play favorites. Keep your ego at the door. Don't let it ever enter the work area with you. Ego is the biggest killer of everything good that can possibly happen. At the end of the day, remember, you are a leader, not a dictator. So if you're a leader, you need to be human at all times. When you're leading your team, make sure that you treat them as humans and not as machines that deliver the tasks that you put onto them. Okay? And be human to the extent that when you give them work, in normal circumstances, exceptional circumstances, I can understand. In normal circumstances, give them a fair load. Don't overburden them with something where they perpetually have to wait and work extra hours. And when necessary, do the work, pitch in. I remember when I was the CEO of my jewelry factory, during the rush periods where we were getting ready to deliver goods for Christmas, I used to sit and do a simple thing like making vouchers. Yeah, one might say it is way below my pay scale, but that's what the team needed at that time. Those 2 or 3 or 4 hands that were there were just not adequate for the amount of paperwork that used to be involved. And I would sit on the shop floor with them and do it. So you need to pitch in when the need arises. You need to make it a habit to celebrate progress and give constructive feedback, not criticism, when things go south. And there will always be challenges. And this will automatically help you to develop your team members. And therefore, you are taking them ahead, as we just talked about. Appreciate the contributions that they are making. Appreciate the successes that they achieve. And as I said, give feedback, but coach them, don't criticize them. We already talked about treating everybody as human. I believe that is very important to treat them as human and get involved in them as a human being, maybe even beyond work. We have spoken about this in another episode. You know your child is not well. You know his wife is not well. You know his father is not well. Inquire. Try to remember. Try to be conscious. Treat him as a human being and inquire, how is your wife doing? How is your child doing? And as a leader, learn to handle criticism. I have been criticized for the most ridiculous things one can think of. I remember when I was working in a factory, somebody comes with a plate of samosas and puts it on my table saying, you eat this. And I did. And it wasn't the best samosa in the world, but I finished both of them. I finished the plate and I told him, I'm sorry, now you don't have breakfast. But that's the kind of criticism that's going to come your way. Okay, so learn to handle it. And as I said, remember that a fancy title does not make you a leader. Don't ever forget this. If you've been promoted to a CEO, that does not mean you're a great leader. That means you're a great manager. A great leader is when your team respects you and tells you or indicates to you that, yes, we are with you. You are our leader. Communicate honestly. Walk the talk, that automatically speaks about it. There's a big challenge when you don't communicate honestly. because ambiguity leads to speculation, it leads to misunderstandings, everybody worries, and there's a whole lot of confusion going on. Be accountable at all times, own up to your mistakes. Pursue excellence. Set the pace. Set the standards. Set the practices and values that you want your organization to follow. You lead the way, you act accordingly, you walk the talk, and your team will definitely follow you. And as we spoke in our leadership session a few episodes earlier, you become a servant leader and you work for the team. Quickly, in 2 minutes, I know it's already about 20 minutes since we've started. In 2 minutes, I'm going to give out 3-4 out-of-the-box ideas that I think will help you to become a better leader and lead the organization. Hold reverse meetings. What I mean by reverse meetings is let your team set up the meeting, let them set up the agenda. And trust me, I have tried this. It will give you fresh ideas on how something can be done because you're not involved. For you, everything is going to be 100% fresh. And it will reveal challenges that the team has, which otherwise would not come up. Practice the 2-minute rule. I think we've discussed this also before. Okay, at any meeting, whoever is vocal, whoever is talking, he can talk for as long as he does not take a breath or for 2 minutes at the most. Another thing to do, create curiosity projects. Create projects which may not be directly related to work, but which will make people curious. They will go on the net, they will read books, they will research, they will find out new things. You are expanding their knowledge. Shadow and monitor your team at all times. Organize silent brainstorming sessions. I have never done this in my factory, but I've done it when I was consulting with somebody. Because we are a team of about 14 people, out of which, even when I started, I was told that 9 of them are introverts. So getting them to speak at a meeting is very challenging. So we had this silent thing. We would appoint one person who would be the official reader. And everybody gives their ideas and their thoughts in writing on a piece of paper anonymously. I tell you, we did not know that those introverts had such brilliant ideas till we did this practice. So no discussions, no presentations. Let them write down and give you, and somebody reads it, it's noted, and it's included in the agenda. Implement no meeting days. I think meetings are very often a big drain on your time. And this I used to practice. Organize a meeting which only is meant for giving you feedback. Nothing new is discussed. Whatever is happening in the factory, whatever is happening in the office, whatever is happening in the sales department, they will only give you a feedback. Oh, but sir, this is wrong. It's going to be 90% about negative things. Be prepared. But it's very important because then only can you fix things. So essential skills of the thing, you need a high IQ, of course. You need to have ability to create a psychological safety for all your employees. You need to have coaching skills. You need to have your own sense of purpose. You need to have the capability to manage change management, and you need to be great at execution. Okay. These are the ideas for being a good leader. I hope you found them useful. Do comment and let me know. I've received some comments where they need expansion on some of the points I made. Well, friends, let me tell you that is going to be a difficult task because everybody may not be interested in getting into that level of detail which you are asking for. So 3 of you all who have specially asked for a lot of detailed explanations and understanding, please connect with me directly on my email. My email is me@shahhemanth.com. Please email me directly specifying what clarifications you want, and I will be more than happy to address them. Thank you. Have a great evening.